Great explorers, thanks for joining us again and welcome back to another exciting and informative video on our YouTube channel. If you are joining us for the first time, we want to thank you for watching. In this episode, I will be diving into the reason why France in Africa, and more importantly why Macron's policy has increased distrust and also anger in the region. I will look at geopolitics here, look at France's interaction with the continent of Africa, and why African countries are beginning to charter a new part in their own history and selecting their partners, and also making sure that their relationships to an extent is becoming of equal. I will dive into geopolitics here, bring you some historical perspective, more analytical information, and more importantly, I will encourage you to watch this video to the end for clarity and better understanding. So without any more delay, let's just dive straight into it. France West Africa has experienced 5 coups in the past 3 years. Underpinning most of those coups is hostile towards France, a former colonial authority. Mohamed Bazoum of Niger downfall in July of 2023 this year come after coups in Mali in August of 2022, Chad in April of 2021, Burkina Faso in September of 2022, and Gabon most recently September of 2023. The perpetrators of those coups have, amongst other things, justifications and mention the overwhelming and also overbearing influence of France and its president, Emmanuel Macron, in their affairs, the influence of France in the military affairs, and also maintenance of dominance in the businesses has been in the key cock of the Macron's agenda. Unlike other former colonial powers, France still has military bases in Cote d'Ivoire, Senegal, and also Gabon. If you look at France's interaction in the region, at the same time, Emmanuel Macron has put forward entrepreneurship as the best form of development assistance. This strategic pivot away from personal relationship with African leaders is rooted in Macron's neoliberal beliefs. This is a political approach that focuses on free and favor free market capitalism and also deregulations and reductions in government spending. I am a historian who has researched the relationship between France and its former colony. I am an expert in African policy, and more importantly, I am also looking into the research-based aspect based on my own perspective, a pro-African who also review Africans' interaction and also engagement with the global community. In Africa, Macron neoliberal turn has stripped France of the long-standing myth that it was somehow a more benevolent colonizer because of the cultural links it established with African elites. Macron's approach has only increased distrust and anger because a large military presence has not been replaced by a new international economic order, but with small-scale business deals and startups. This is not what Africans want, but it is what they got at the moment based on their relationship with France. If you look at the neoliberal values as France's values at the moment, rather than remarking of economic and financial infrastructure, Macron has pushed entrepreneurship as development assistance, promoting startups and training African youths. Agence France de la Développement, France's main institution for policy implementation, is still investing in education, agriculture, and infrastructure. But what Macron wants to observers to notice is that increasingly French development aid in Africa has to be run by French businesses. France corporations are no longer making money in secret, as it's the era of France Afrique. This is what a period when France presidents supported African dictators to maintain influence. Rather, Macron's speeches have also put forward business activities and neoliberal values on France's values that benefit continent of Africa. If you look at other aspects, this reliance on France's culture and also values can be seen as continuation of a strategy that started with the French colonial project. Macron's value, however, are the values of neoliberalism based on my own analysis. At home, Macron has pushed through a pension plan to limit French state debt. Abroad, he wants French development policy to be driven by private initiatives. In light of that strategy, it becomes clear that sentiments among Africans have not become more anti-French. Rather, by elevating economics to a core value of his relationship to Africa, Macron has played into a widely accepted African worldview in which Underdevelopment is the product of dependency on Europe and neo-colonial exploitation. Every visitor who talks to cab drivers or other vendors in other countries across the African continent will quite quickly note that France is seen as a colonizer first of all. Possibly France secondly will be that they are not there to carry out development and infrastructural growth, considering the perspective and what they see what China is doing across the region. What has changed is that Emmanuel Macron has unknowingly confirmed Africans' suspicions about his intentions. He never wanted to change economic structures. Instead, Africans get breadcrumbs in the form of startups money, based on other analysis. French market as the dividing line in West Africa. Entrepreneurship is not universally loved on the continent. The belief is that free market as an engine for development has redrawn the battle lines in West Africa. Countries within the regional body AGOA like Ghana, Nigeria and Senegal, which have had high economic growth in the past decades, are crashing with Niger, Mali and also Burkina Faso, which have experienced damping poverty based on recent figures. If you look at other aspects, while other African countries like Kenya are confronted with similar debate about how to stimulate development, Kenyan President William Ruto famously believed in the hustle nation. Climate change and terrorism have led to a more combustible mix in the Sahel region. The juntas have come to power, therefore do not only present themselves as caretakers who are trying to do the job politicians would not do. They are also claiming that they want a new ideological direction for their countries. Ibrahim Traoré in Burkina Faso has tied himself to be the successor to Thomas Sankara. Assimi Goïta has cast himself as the reformer, not a revolutionarist. In the past, the fires of African instability and anti-French sentiment were fanned by French under delivering on their promises and other aspects, some cynically, and promise of big structural changes. Today, instability is being fed by oppositions in the African leaders who demand big structural changes but are met with small business efforts to maintain French influence in the continent of Africa. If you look at France's manipulation and interaction in the region, France has faced incredible pressure from African countries. Most leaders in the region are pushing back, not just those in West Africa. France's presence and withdrawal from Niger has also clearly indicated that France is not ready for prime time and also to engage with African countries in a transparent way. We all shall be looking on why France will continue to struggle with the presence of Russia, China and also some other external players like the United States and European Union countries fighting and also looking to make their stand in the region. African countries have decided to charter a new part in their history, and African nations have clearly indicated that they are not going back to where things were a couple of decades ago. We want to thank you for watching. Hopefully we've informed you as the reason why the current France's African policy and Macron's instigation with regards to trust and also interaction in Africa hasn't gone down well in the region. We all are looking at what happens in Niger and how France will transcend itself and re-energize its relationship based on investment in infrastructure and also funding massive projects like what Chinese are doing in the region. African countries are looking for infrastructure, roads. They are not looking for democratic discussions and also talking about other things that are not relevant to their growth and job creation. These are some of the reasons why anti-French sentiment is extremely high in the region, and we all are continuing to see that France is not getting the story so far, and the door and the window is closing really rapidly for France, as also Russia is taking over and the Chinese are making sure that their presence is felt, and France is facing a backlash back at home and also among European countries who are strengthening their relationship with several African blocs in the region. We want to thank you for watching. We're looking forward to meeting you soon in our next episode. Have a good day. Bye-bye.
Chef d'État Africa is the only continent in the world where the people sing and dance and applaud those who impoverish them, who starve them, and who torture them. The misfortune of Africa is to have met France. End of quote. It's true that the West was violent with Africa, raped it, and stole from Africa. So what is our share of the responsibility in all of this as African leaders? Is it not us, the African leaders, who have abandoned our identity? Our names have disappeared in order to make way for other names that do not match our realities. We need to reconquer our own culture and take ownership. And that's why today people try to make us believe that our values and our attitudes are not natural and are not part of freedom, and that there will never be a question of homosexuality for us. Let me repeat that. Homosexuality will not take root in our countries. Mr. President, now what's just been described are very unfortunate labels used by the UN that can be summed up as follows. 1.2 million people who are in the depths of poverty. $2.2 billion of the United States money invested in weapons, 20 times the budget of the United Nations invested in the nuclear, and all of these should be compared to issues of development. Africa gets from the IMF and the World Bank $34 billion vis-a-vis $160 billion invested in the West. The paralysis of the Security Council, the paralysis of the World Trade Organization, increasing tensions due to geostrategic repositioning. The World Health Organization, which is increasingly dominated by Western pharmaceutical companies, and trade interests. We see this, for example, with the priority attached in terms of trade to vaccines against COVID-19. The United Nations is more and more in the shadows of its own attempts of being taken hostage by a conglomerate of international powers. Now, by consequence of all this, the African people, generally speaking, and in the Sahel specifically, will fight tooth and nail so that ECOWAS and the African Union and even the United Nations become service institutions truly in the service of the peoples of the world for the profound emancipation of these peoples and true social progress. Because the lack of these organizations, their inefficiency, their lack of sincerity, their client-based decisions in variable geometry, their crimes, the promotion of bad governance, looting, social disorganization, and corruption all lead unfailingly to coups d'etats, which are then just consequences of all the aforementioned. So let's look at the root causes, which will disappear. If we continue with this, putting our heads in the sand like the ostrich, with this hypocritical form of diplomacy, with state-sponsored crimes and organized crime, state-sponsored lies, constitutional lies, and the making heads of state for Africa, even the United Nations will not be spared this coup d'etat. In this regard, and in order to take our destiny in our own hands, Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso signed the Partnership of the States of the Sahel, which is abbreviated as the AES. The AES is an architecture that was set up to secure our countries by a treaty with revised authority for development, including the region of Lipto-Gourma. Taking into account the security situation and the lack of a partnership, what's at stake here is our own resources and working together in order to eradicate discontinuity in operational maneuvering. Mr. President, I say here with force and firmly, in an intelligible and highly spoken voice, the following. First, we African peoples are profoundly democratic. By way of proof, our attachment to human dignity goes beyond democracy. It transcends it. What we refuse is the lesser democracy, this trap of democracy, which has been extended. Electoral-based democracy, which turned out to be a way of controlling our states through playing musical chairs with the leaders, who are often imposters and corrupt, who steal and rape. Second, we Africans are today recognized in our dignity as people, in the sense of one person is equal to one person.